Welcome to the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks Show, a series designed to give you insight into the world of self-publishing and marketing your books. Featuring your hosts, Shannon, the author behind the pen name S.C. Huston, Ben Pick, and Morgan Lee. Join us several times each month when we interview authors about their self-publishing and marketing journeys, talk to industry leaders, and discuss books about writing, self-publishing, and marketing. Hi everyone, I'm Shannon, writing under the pen name of S.C. Huston, and I'm the author of A Curse of Scales and Feathers and the Clash of Goddesses series. Today we have fantasy romance author Elayna Gallea. Before we talk to her, let's give some updates on what's happening in our lives. And note, we are recording this in April, and this episode is airing on July 15th.
Yeah, I don't know what I'll be doing in July. I actually have a couple of in-person events that I'm going to between now and then, but by July, I should be well into drafting my fourth book. So I'm really excited to get started on that. Today, I'm actually going to be doing a deep dive into the outline process.
Oh.
So hopefully I will get a lot of work done today and this week, and then I will be good to go for actually writing my next novel.
And did you outline the first three books?
Oh, yeah.
And
So
I know that when we
sequence.
met, you were just finishing up your first book. So I didn't even know what your process was leading up to that. But
Oh, yeah. Very, very deep outlining. So I have a robust outline that I go through. So it's going to take more than a week. It might take the next month, but
oh wow.
we'll get
So
there.
yeah, that makes sense. You spend that time setting up the outline. I wish I could outline. I tried it. Actually, I did it for my debut novel. It was so boring to write. I forced myself to finish it. I was like, no, I can't do this. And I tried again with my second novel to write an outline, but I kept changing it and going somewhere else. I was like, forget this. It's frustrating. But I do keep a lot of things in my head though. Well, for me, July 15th, we would have just finished the authortube writing conference, which I'll link it in the description box below on YouTube and in the show notes, because you can still catch all those presentations for free. But I'll be happy to be done with that and heading off to, hopefully on the day this airs, we'll be heading out to Europe or that day or within a few days of this day for a family vacation that we've been planning for a few years. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully as well, I will have my next Kickstarter up. It will just be the pre-launch. I plan to launch it when I get back from the vacation in Europe. So I'll probably launch in August. So look for that as well. All right. And then we usually have another co-host with us, Morgan Lee, but she let us know this morning she was not able to make it for this interview, which we'll miss her, and we were thinking of you, Morgan. All right, we'll move on to our guest author for the day. Elayna Gallea lives in Western New Brunswick with her hubby and two children. She's basically an indoor cat, and when she isn't reading or writing, she's probably cooking up a storm and watching Food Network. She lives on coffee and the occasional glass of water.
Hi,
Hello.
thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for agreeing to come on the podcast. Would you please take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself or touch on anything that we didn't say in your bio?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Elayna, and I am Canadian. I'm a fantasy romance author, and by the time this comes out, my tagline, I'm just like working on a few things, but basically my romantasy books tear out your heart, but I promise I'll put it back together. So romantasy that will tear out your heart. And yeah, I write in, right now, most of my books take place in the same world, but as of the time of this, I'm going to be like moving on to another world in the future very soon.
Nice. I'm just starting a series in a new world that I see lots of other series happening in the world. So I'm curious to get into that a little bit more. And I left it different. I wrote YA fantasy before, and I think you had a different background, but I think that's what Ben's going to ask you about next. So let's go ahead and transition to some intro questions, and I'll let Ben ask that question when it gets there. But what made you want to start writing? And can you tell us about your journey to self-publishing your first work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I've always been a reader. I think that a lot of authors will say that. And then when I decided to start writing, it was in the middle of the pandemic. And then it was actually 3 days before my 31st birthday. So I'll never forget, because it's just like so ingrained. And I turned to my husband and I was like, I think I'm going to write a book. And he was like, okay, he is my number one supporter. He was like, great, write a book. And I did. And then I was like, wow, this is really addictive. And then once I started writing, I just didn't stop writing. And I haven't stopped since then. Yeah. And then so after I wrote that first book, and I went through like all the things that I published it in D. And once the ball got started rolling, it just never stopped.
Wonderful. Can you tell us what genres you write and what drew you to write in them? And more specifically, how many books you have published?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first series was like a mix of dystopian fantasy romance, and it was like purely YA. And I've actually just pulled that series down because I feel like it doesn't jive with my current brand. And in the future, I think I'm going to go back and rework it and pull out all the fantasy aspects and really like push it forward and just like rework few things. I actually really love that series. I think it was beautiful and it obviously got me started on this journey. But so I started in that like weird mix of stuff that wasn't like really any genre, and it was very hard to market because it was like just a story that I really wanted to tell. And now I write like really firmly fantasy romance. Some of my books are more high epic fantasy. Some of my books are like more romance forward, but they all are within that like romantasy genre. I have, including like a series that I just pulled down, I have written 17 books. 3 of them are co-written, and my 18th book right now is with beta readers, and I just started 19 yesterday. So I've written a lot, and I have really big plans for book number 20. I can't talk about them yet, but I'm very excited about them.
Sorry, just a really quick follow-up question, but are all those books written since 2021 when you started?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, wow. That's fascinating.
I'm a really fast writer, and I just have a lot of, I think, stories that I really needed to tell. But I will say that I have hit more of a manageable pace in the last year or so. Like my goal for 2024 was not to burn out. So I've like really pulled back and like made sure that I'm taking time. Yeah.
So I have a similar story without all the number of books or the success that you found. But I started in the YA fantasy and realized what was really hard to market. It was based off of Irish mythologies, and that was really hard to market. And I still sell, but it's not comparable to what I'm doing now. And I firmly moved into romantasy, and I'm trying to. And I have thought about can I rewrite that series and make it more of a romantasy? But I don't think I can. Not with the way the series ended. But so I don't think I'm gonna bullet. But I don't write. I wish I could write fast like that. But we're going to ask you later too about how how you juggle all of this. But we'll go ahead and move forward from the intro questions now into your publishing questions, which is how did you make the decision to self-publish versus traditional publishing? And did anything or anyone inspire you to make this decision?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was never really a question for me about going into trad because I really, really like control and I'm very chaotic. That's just sort of like my nature. And that's one of the reasons why I have been able to write so fast is because I just tend to like really dive head on into something. So when I wrote my first book and I was just like, no, I'm not even going to worry about querying it because I had so much to say. And I knew that I already knew by the time that I finished Sequence that I was like, I really want to do this for a long time. So I just jumped right into indie, and I'm also like a number one strategic. That's my, like, I have a lot of like really high powering strengths. And so for me, it was just really like that I was going to jump right into things. And I did. I do have a friend who I taught. I was a teacher. When this airs, I will not be teaching anymore. I might do a few hours, but I taught online starting in 2016, like before it was cool. And so I had another teacher friend who also started to write. And so we like sort of joined this like writing journey together. And we co-wrote the co-written books that I had like art together. So we sort of like went on this journey into indie publishing at the same time. And that's sort of like we held each other's hands as we went through it.
I used to teach too, but I had some online classes, but I taught in the classroom as well. It was a college level. But yeah, sorry, Ben, I'll let you get to your question.
No worries. What is one misconception that you had about self-publishing before you published your first work?
Yeah, I think I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but I did not know how much work it would be. I don't think like I really understood like the magnitude that is marketing, which is how my first book ended up being like such a random jumble of things because I didn't understand like that you have to be able, well, you don't have to be able to, but it would be nice to be able to market the thing that you wrote. And I didn't really like think about that when I was writing it.
And that kind of goes along with the misconceptions, which is this idea that you mentioned how you did this publishing path with a friend of yours. Did you guys have role models that you looked at? Was there anybody you were following or anything that you were consuming to figure out what you wanted to do in indie publishing?
Not like specifically. We just sort of jumped into it and like researched, and her strengths are very different from mine. So we really like balance each other out. Mm-hmm. And so we made a lot of mistakes, as everybody does, like starting out. And we just sort of like, if I made a mistake, that I would tell her about it and then she wouldn't make that mistake, and then so on and so forth. Like, and so we just built each other up, and we're both seeing like good success at this point. So I think it like really helped to have somebody to work with ourselves.
You had a battle buddy.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Yeah. And strategic, I think it's my number 4 or 5, but it's in my top 5. Yeah. So my number 1 is future.
Oh, that's lovely. I'm strategic, competitive, achiever, significant, deliberative. So I'm like really
Yeah.
I just really like two things.
I think it's like all like 4 of mine are green, which is the getting stuff done,
Yeah.
and then one blue. And I have nothing that is integrating with other people or collaborating. I have none of that in my top 5. So, but which, if those who don't know what we're talking about the Clifton Strengths, which I found through Becca Syme, who's on YouTube and in various places. And it's free to take the test to get your first 5 strengths, and there's 34 strengths altogether. So it's interesting to see the combination and to figure out what works for you as a writer and what works for you as a marketer, and things like that. So yeah. All right. So from your point of view, what have been your greatest publishing successes?
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest, I'm a very pessimistic person in general. So when I published my first book, I did not ever see myself getting to where I am because I just didn't envision it. Positivity is my 34th strength. So I'm very glass half empty. Honestly, everything I've achieved is a huge publishing success for me because I didn't see myself getting here. As far as general quantitative things, I have 2 books that have been bestsellers in their categories for 2024, other than just a few days. And that, I think, for me is probably one of the biggest ones. Tethered, I love Tethered, but my biggest publishing success comes from getting A Birth and Flame, which is a series of my heart, and getting that one to be a bestseller, because while it is written more to market than my first series was, it's not as easy to market as Tethered. So getting it to the right readers really fills my heart with joy.
What are some under-discussed challenges you faced with self-publishing, and how have you overcome them? Are there any strategies or resources that you found particularly helpful? And I know you already mentioned your battle buddy, but anything else?
Yeah, I think it's so important to have a community. But more than that, I think it was something that a challenge that a lot of people face, and that I know that I faced, was not necessarily writing to market, but knowing how to take something and then market it. And I think that when I learned, at least for myself, that it helps to have some comp titles before I go into writing a book, that was a game changer for me, because then I knew as I was writing, I would keep it in mind, this is what I'm going to say, that this is for these readers. And so it would be helpful if I could remember that that is the vibe that I'm going for. So I think that that is one of my biggest tips that I always tell people is if you can think about how you're going to market it before you have a finished product, it is going to make your life a lot easier. And I'm a total pantser. So I just sit down and write. And usually my books start out with, now they start with comp titles, hopefully a tagline, and maybe a blurb if it's a book 1. But I don't usually write blurbs for books that are not book 1s till I send out ours. So not right at the beginning. Yeah.
I've never heard of a strategy of having comp titles ahead of time. When I was going into this new series that I'm writing, I did realize I need to kind of know what the market is looking for. So I thought in terms of tropes. So I did write down a list of tropes I thought would be interesting, that if I could mold the story around those tropes, then I would do that, which is what I did. Although when I also didn't have a blurb. And when I sent them, I did alpha readers and beta readers because I had never written romantasy. I'd only written fantasy my entire life. So I had 2 groups I sent it to, and I put together a blurb right last minute. But then I did ask in the questions, does this book remind you of anything? So I got comp titles later, but I think that's smart to do it ahead of time. So I'm definitely going to use that strategy in the future. So, all right. So we noticed that at least for your most successful series, and that's one with Tethered, you changed the book covers shortly after publishing them last year. Can you tell us about this decision and what differences you've seen since changing the covers?
Yeah. So I changed the covers for the Binding Chronicles, which is Tethered, Tormented, and Treasured. Although I did change them before Treasured came out. The main reason was that I felt the first covers didn't accurately convey the dark fairy tale vibes properly. And so I really wanted to show that what the story is, which is it's a dark fairy tale, but it's not super dark, but all my books are dark-ish. Tethered is my least dark book, and I actually wrote it as a break from my A Birth and Flame series because that one is a lot darker. But I felt the covers didn't accurately portray that. And so I did change them. I did put the old covers up in a Shopify store for about 3 months, and I had them printed through Book Vault because I wanted to make sure that people could complete their series. But the reason why I did it was so that the vibes would fit and it would be better suited in the market as to where it sits. And it was definitely a good decision. So Tethered had already been doing well, but changing it made it do really well because it now fits with all the other books in the genre, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I can see that. Although I did see, I went to go look for your other covers, and I think they were on Goodreads maybe. And I think think they're beautiful, but you saying that, about the dark fairy tale vibe, I do think that we have now definitely fits better. But I love that the black, it's like the black, white, and red really are themes, and the shadows and like the shadow figures and stuff. I really liked it. I thought it was pretty, but yeah, I can understand for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like those covers too. I think that changing it was a really difficult decision to make, but ultimately, looking back now, like future me can say to past me that you did the right thing. I wasn't sure because Tethered had been seeing success. It saw success like really early on, and I think that I knew that it was like going to do well even before it came out. But I never saw it doing the way that it's like done well since then. But changing it was really good, and it was like really empowering for me. I designed the new covers for the Binding Chronicles and the Cheesing Chronicles, which is the other series that I have set in this world myself. And so putting them out every time someone says, "Oh, I really like those," I'm like, "Oh, thank you." It's like extra validation, which I just love that.
Well, since you designed the covers, I mean, were there any other costs associated with publishing those books and changing those covers immediately? Because I know a lot of people deciding to hire somebody to create those covers. I mean, that is a sunk cost, and you'd kind of hope that you make it back with your edits and all the other pre-publishing efforts. But I mean, did the cost ever factor into your decision to change the covers?
Yeah, I think there's always like thoughts about how this could like negatively affect things, especially because Tethered was doing so well already. And then I was worried that doing this was really going to like tank things because it was a really recognizable cover. To be honest, even if I had paid someone to do it, it still would have been worth it because of like just the growth that a series has seen since then. I still would have done it, but I will say that I probably would not have spent like thousands of dollars on the covers getting done. Like I, in general, don't love to do that. Now, I also
is that thousands cumulative or thousands
like on each cover? I don't think I would do that. Spend like thousands on one cover and then another. And I think if I had, I would have like probably been even more scared to do that. But I do think that sometimes putting that investment into your books, you can definitely see a return in them. I actually changed the covers for the Edinburgh Chronicles too. So that was not the first time that I did that. I changed those back in January of 2023 because of Earth and Flame. That series was like my first venture into romantasy, and the covers were like not right. And so I had gut covers do the whole series when I redid it with like optic covers, and it worked really well. And so that was another moment that I was like, I already generally knew that changing covers could be helpful, but I didn't know like how it could be.
I think about that for my first series. It was suggested to me that eventually I might want to change the covers just because, covers and that what's considered in the moment change over time. But I haven't figured out if I want to spend the money on that. And I did make the covers for my first series. I hired a designer for the first book, and then I did my second book cover as just a stand-in for Camp NaNoWriMo. And I liked my cover better. So then I ended up doing all my covers, but I don't think I could do whole covers again like that. Although I did draw the dragon that's on my second book cover that's coming out. I have not shown anybody that book cover yet, but I did the dragon. So yeah. So yeah. But I don't know if I want to spend the money for it, but then I'm like, okay, then does it mean I'm making my book covers again? But I don't know what to do. I'm not as talented in that, I feel. Your book covers did not, they're beautiful. So I did not even guess that you would have made your book covers. So.
Thank you. I think it is definitely like a skill, and I feel it's easier like once you have the first one, but building that first cover for a series takes the longest. So like once I had Tethered, then making Tormented and Treasured was not that bad. And then when I went to go make Troubled, again, it was not too bad. Troubled is the fourth book in the Binding Chronicles, and it's by the time this comes out, it should hopefully be already written. I just started it yesterday though, but so it will be. It'll be done, and then it'll be like with betas, and I'm hoping to put it out in September or October.
Nice. Yeah, I think you don't have a cover up yet. You have it on Amazon, but it's just right. It's not the actual.
I just changed it a little while ago because people were asking me if it's like a fourth book in the same series. So it was a black cover. It's the same like kind of cover, but it's purple instead of red. So it has like just to differentiate it a bit.
Okay. Yeah. Well, where do you see the future of self-publishing heading in the next 5 to 10 years, especially with the rise of digital platforms and AI technologies? And is there anything that you're doing to prepare for the changes?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So indie pub, I think is just going to keep growing and growing, especially with this trend that we're seeing of like trad coming in, and they're like watching, I think, indies really closely to see what's happening because indie can move so much faster than the big five, right? Like they just don't have, there's a lot more moving pieces in that than when you have indie, we can like really stream ahead. So I don't think indie publishing is going anywhere. I think that it is definitely going to keep evolving and changing. I don't know what's going to happen with AI. I think that the best thing that we can all do is like follow the discourse that is happening around it and just like see what is going on. I really love working with like human artists. And so that's not going to change for me. I just like commissioned more art today. So that's not going anywhere. But I think that trying to predict what's going to happen with AI, like I would have never seen AI coming a few years ago. So I can't even imagine what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years from now.
Cool. If you could only pass on one thing to aspiring self-published writers, what's your best publishing tip or trick?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so many different things that you can do, right? And there's so many different ways that you can become an indie author. But my biggest thing that I always tell people is like there's a lot of people who try to prey on like indie authors in general, but like especially very new indie authors. So if you can find yourself a battle buddy, like if you can find somebody that you can like be like, hey, how does this sound to you? Like, or I just saw this, and then you guys can like talk it out and see if maybe that is a good thing or not a good thing. That kind of stuff can really help. I think that it can be really scary as an indie publisher to be like on your own and then looking at all these things, and everyone says that this is how you should do things, and this is how you should do things, and this is how you should do things. I would not want to put like $5,000 or $10,000 into a debut. If I was an indie author, I would advise to try not to do that if possible.
I love that.
I was going to say, unfortunately, I mean, I don't know how your inbox is, but on a weekly or monthly basis, there's somebody who wants to do SEO optimization or pay me for reviews, or I'll blast your book or whatever to tens of thousands of people in my newsletter and this and the other. So yeah, it is definitely feels a bit predatory.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And on social media, like on IG, I get them in my messaging there. So yeah, it's always, and I always wonder when I'm reading things, I'm like, okay, I know this is a scam. Like we have a separate account for the AuthorTube writing conference, and we have 2 other chairs who have access to the inbox. And so something came through and I was like, what is this? So I contacted them and they're like, no, it's not us. I was like, okay, it's spam. But you have to be very careful, because you're like, if this came across for somebody who didn't know any better, would they actually go and try to pay for services, or if it's like a link that leads you to malicious software or whatever. So yeah, it's very careful. All right, so we're going to transition from your publishing questions to marketing questions. You have a strong presence on TikTok that has led to book sales. Can you share your strategies for how you use the platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been on TikTok since 2021. So like November is when I joined, I think. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing for almost 2 years. I mean, like I saw all of these people on TikTok, and because of my strengths, I was like, I know that this can work, and I was trying to figure it out. But I'm also a millennial, and I do not like social media very much. So it wasn't until I took this course in October, I think, of 2023. It was like TikTok for authors, which I'm not associated with, but I'm just saying that's what I took, and I figured out what I was doing wrong, which for me was like the most important thing. And it was that basically I was not focusing enough on books. Like I didn't know how to optimize the For You page, and I didn't know how to do a lot of things. So I just basically took this course and had TikTok explained to me like I was 5, which for like social media, basically I am, because I don't know how it works. And since then, I have done a lot better on TikTok, and it is my number one source of marketing now. I think that I try to use it as best I can. I try to interact with readers on there, but I will say that more of my readers actually come from Instagram who interact with me personally, but TikTok gets my book out to more readers, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And the reason why, because I, when I do research into the authors, I look at, where they're at online, what's going on and their books. And I saw you had, a lot of TikToks, and I was like, oh, wow, she's really killing it here. And then I read some of the reviews for your books, and so many of them said, oh, I found this book on TikTok. I don't think I read any that said I found the book on Instagram.
Yeah, no. And I think that that's true. It also depends for me, I think, on where the readers come from and then where they interact more.
Yeah.
But I don't read reviews, so I don't see those.
Yeah.
Because
totally understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do not enjoy being on TikTok, but I do go on TikTok for books. But I mostly post and ghost. I will interact with other authors enough and in other bookish things, but I try not to stay on there too much because it's not great for
I don't like social media either. I get it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, is that the TikTok course for authors? Is that the one with Mark Dawson? Because I've heard of that one, but I don't know. I think there's other ones.
Yeah, this one I took with Elayna, Alyn Digital Solutions, and I can send you the link. I'll just in the chat. So that's the one that I took, and it was good because I needed it explained to me. I did not understand the platform, which it became very apparent to me within watching the first video what I was doing wrong. And I remember I bought the course, and it was a Sunday, and I came home home and I put it on 2 times speed and I just watched the whole thing, like all the hours. And then I got to work like fixing my TikTok account. And 2 weeks later, I had my first viral video. And that really changed like everything for me.
That's so awesome to hear.
Yeah.
So beyond TikTok and also Instagram, how do you integrate cross-platform marketing into your strategy, or is it just those two? And is there, a third or fourth medium that you find effective to reaching your target audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of one of the, like my author brand is just like, I'm very chaotic. It's one of the reasons why I have so much going on all at once is because I'm just like not good at doing one thing at one time. But I'm also very lazy. So I will make a video on TikTok and then I will save that video. And if I remember, I also save the captions. And so I will post that on like the Meta business app. I think it's called like Business Suite. And then I just post it to Facebook from there. And I change the music if it's not like a cut or whatever. And then I just like plug in the caption and I put that there. And I also sometimes post on Pinterest, but I feel like that one is my least usable one. It just takes a lot of spoons and I don't usually do that because I don't have that much marketing that I enjoy doing. So TikTok is my number one. Then I will post it on Facebook because that does like not take a lot of mental space. And sometimes I will do Pinterest after that. But when I look at my stats, almost everyone is coming from TikTok and then from Instagram. So those are my two biggest ones.
Have you thought about putting them on YouTube for shorts?
I haven't attempted that yet because I don't think I have the spoons for that to move into like yet another platform. But I do, my battle buddy is experimenting with those. So she's like going to check in with me and tell me if she thinks it's worth it.
I did a few, like I really didn't like TikTok. I didn't want to learn a new platform. Really, it was just the bandwidth of learning something new.
Mhm.
And I was on Instagram, but it was mostly just connecting with other authors. But my presence is really on YouTube. But then when I was trying to promote my first book into this new series with Fantasy, I thought, okay, I'm going to do some stuff. I'm going to do it. And I put it on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. And Instagram actually did the best. And then it was YouTube. And then TikTok just didn't really do it all. So I was like, okay, I'm done with TikTok. But I'll probably try it again eventually in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So what marketing have you tried that you would never do again?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I looked at this question, I think I have like two separate answers. So one, I have attempted BookBub ads and they just don't work for me. And in the realm of like all the other ads, I just couldn't get them to work for me. So I think that those I have like, I'm not doing those again, BookBub ads, because I think that they're just like learning that I don't want to do right now. But second, this is not maybe a never would do again, but for the moment, I don't plan on it, is I'm not going to give away any free books anytime soon because I think that the market for free books is really saturated. And a year ago, it was like a really good way to get like romantasy books out and to find new readers. But I think that right now people have so many free books on their Kindles that they're maybe just like hoarding them and not reading them. And the last time I did a free book, I did not see the return that I would have liked to see from it. So I think that for now, that is the one thing that I'm going to steer away from.
If you could pass on only one thing to aspiring self-published writers, what's your best marketing tip or trick?
Yeah, this is such a good one. And I think that it's really important to be yourself because readers can see if you're like not being authentically you. And I know I've mentioned it before, but like I'm chaotic and my readers know I'm chaotic. So when I like move a release date up or send arcs out or just be like, hey, I'm doing this surprise, then they know to expect that kind of stuff from me. But also like it's a little funny because I am like that and they know that I'm like that. So there's a trust there. If I stopped being chaotic and started having like a really beautiful Instagram feed, for example, they would probably be questioning what is going on. And I think that it's really helpful to build like that authentic relationship with your readers. I don't think that you should be on social media. Well, no, I don't think that you need to be on social media all the time. But I think that if you can find a way to be yourself, then that can really help.
And I think that's really, really important now too with the rise of AI, because I think people like to know, oh, there's actually a human writing this story behind the scenes, not a machine,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's important. All right, so we're going to transition from marketing questions to your writing life questions, which is what I'm curious about because you have written so much in a short period of time, at least in my estimation. So could you walk us through your creative process from the inception of a book idea to its publication, and how do you stay inspired and navigate the different parts of the writing and publishing process?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a pantser. And so things just like come to me. Some of my stories have started differently than others. Of Earth and Flame, when that one came to me, it just appeared and I sat down and I started to write it. Tethered was my second story in the same world. Well, the second series in the same world. And I had already known that I wanted to write vampires into this world. And then the idea for the tether came to me. So if you don't know, the tether is like a magical binding. They can't go more than 30 feet apart without experiencing extreme pain and then dying. So that's like really severe. And I thought to myself, what would happen if like a human was tethered to a vampire? And then I was like, oh, okay, this would be really fun. So I came up with the tether first, and then everything else sort of flowed after that. But in general, when I do have like, even if I have notes on a book, they're going to be like just a couple sentences, maybe a name if the characters have spoken to me already and like told me their names, but that's about it. And then I just sit down and write. I usually hit a really big roadblock around 30,000 words. And then I feel like everything doesn't work. Took me about a dozen books to realize that that happens every time to me. So now when I get to 27,000 words, I really slow down. I can usually write about 3 to 4K a day if I'm like actively writing. But when I get to 26, then I like move really slowly. And usually it takes about a week to go from 26 to like 33. And then things start to feel better. And then I keep going and I write and I write. And then I usually will go back to the beginning around like 2/3 of the way through and do like a really big cleanup now that I can see the end and fix all that up. And then I do another really big edit after I reach the end and I read the whole thing. And that usually takes almost as long as writing the book. So I can write a book in about 4 weeks, and then I can do the really big edit in about 3 weeks. And then I send it to betas. And then after betas, before proofreaders, I usually go and take about a month to like reread it. And I read it in paper and I do a listening edit, and then I read it on my Kindle and I get a proof copy. And so I read it all those times. And then I sent it to the proofreader for like a final edit, and then proofreading after that before it's like done.
And what keeps you inspired to stay on this loop?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I just really love my stories. Like I really love the stories that I'm telling and the characters that I'm telling. Some of them are really hard to tell. Like when I talk about A Thin Mirror, which is A Birth and Flame, that series, especially the 4th and 5th book, I cried a lot. And I tell my readers too when they're going through it and reading it. I'm like, yeah, I really had a lot of like trouble emotionally with this book because that story is so close to my heart. But usually I will be balancing more than one story at one time. So if I am feeling worn out on one, then I will go and hop into the other one and vice versa.
How much time do you spend working as an author versus everything else? So you mentioned a lot of TikTok, but you wanted to limit TikTok. And then you have this managing your beta readers, your proofreaders, going through rereading, your proof copy, listening to it, everything. Like how much time do you spend doing each of that?
So that's such a good question. I am a full-time author, basically. I teach online, I think like 7 hours a week. So I am also a morning person. I get up at 5 and I do minimum like an hour of writing. And I also have 2 kids. They're 10 and 13. So I try to get stuff done before they get up. And then once they're up, like they have school and stuff. So that's like 2 hours out of my day. And I try to do only writing things, like only writing in a manuscript or editing in a manuscript from the moment like they go to school. And then my husband and I, we like go get coffee. And then he like does stuff for me too. So he works on stuff for my authoring stuff as well. But then I come home and I write. I hit a really big roadblock at 12, like every day, no matter what I'm doing. I cannot write in the afternoon. I can sometimes edit, but writing just doesn't happen. So I will take like the afternoons. That is when I do a lot of like marketing and other kinds of things. But in the morning, that is like my writing creative time. It goes like morning. Yes, I'm fantastic. And then afternoon, no. Evening, sometimes, but my brain is pretty much dead by 7 because I get up at 5. So then I don't usually do a lot on either.
I always tell people I die with the sun. So I'm also a morning person. But yeah, we get up early. We had to, between my husband and I, one of us goes to the gym and the other one puts a kiddo on the bus because he's neurodivergent and goes to school in a different city. That's for him. So, but then as soon as everything's done, I'm back from gym or I put him on the bus, then I sit down and write and I do morning streams on YouTube. But I'm the same, like my most streams get over between like 11 and 11:30. And then after that, it's, take a quick break. And then it's like, I can't write anymore. And then it's all admin stuff after that. So definitely occasionally the story calls to me and I feel like I have to get back to it and I could continue writing. It happened to me like 2 weeks ago. I wrote until like 2 o'clock in the morning. I was like, okay, I have to stop here. I have to go to bed. But it's very rare that that's something like that can happen. Definitely mornings.
Yeah. I usually leave my stories off like very purposefully in the middle of a scene or like not at the end of a chapter. Even if I start like another chapter, I'll always leave myself a sentence or two because I feel like it is better and it's easier for me to pick it up than if I just like close everything off and I have to go back and be like, where was I going with this?
Yeah, I've heard that strategy before, to stop where you're not done yet so you can get back. Yeah. All right. Well, can you tell us about your next book and when it will come out?
Yeah, absolutely. So when this comes out, there's a chance that I've already released it, but I don't think that's going to happen. A Heart of Desire and Deceit will be coming out, I think, on the 22nd, unless I moved it up. So if you go and look and it's already out, then that's happened. But it is with beta readers now, so it will definitely be done by then. That is the second book in the Choosing Chronicles. So this is my latest series. It's like a dystopian fantasy romance. It's like modern. She wants to kill him and he needs a wife. So there's like a marriage competition. It's Love is Blind coded, but romantasy. And the first book ends in like a really big cliffhanger. And then the second book, the second half of their duet sort of like pulls it all together. So that will be coming out. And then I should hopefully have trouble being edited at this time. And then I have other things that I actually cannot talk about them yet.
No worries. Yeah. At least we could touch on those things we do know that are coming out. So people have something to look forward to. Yeah. So, all right. So we like to do something a bit different here, which is we'd love to do a round of rapid fire questions where you answer each question as quickly as possible. You don't have to say yes to this, but are you up for doing rapid round questions?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What comes first for you? The characters, the setting, or the plot?
Okay. That's such a good question. Usually the characters, because they just talk to me when I sit down to write them. And as they talk to me and tell me their story, then everything else comes from there.
And even though you already answered this, let's make it official. Planner, pantser, or plantser?
Totally a pantser, 100%.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning writer or night writer?
Yeah, morning.
Your favorite book you've written?
Oh, okay. So I'm going to go with A Birth and Flame. Tethered is my most popular, but A Birth and Flame is like the book of my heart. So that's definitely my favorite.
Your least favorite book you've written?
That one is hard. I think I'm probably going to go with my debut, not because I don't like it, because I actually think it's like a really beautiful story, but it's just like not where I think it could be, which is why if I re-release it in the future, then it'll be like totally revamped and have like the same strains, but it'll be more me.
Complete the sentence. The best thing about writing is
getting to share your trauma with the world.
Favorite novel of all time?
Oh, that one is so hard. Right now I'm going to go with Outlander because I just love Outlander so much.
Favorite romance or fantasy trope?
Enemies to lovers.
If you could write any other genre, what would it be?
Okay, so if I wasn't writing romantasy, I'd probably fully dive into like epic fantasy and like really make a home in there.
All right. Well, you've answered all of our questions, but before we wrap up, can you tell our listeners where they can find you and purchase your books?
Yeah, absolutely. So as before I mentioned, I'm on TikTok and Instagram at author Elayna R. Gallea on like all the things. And you can find my books on Amazon. They're on Kindle Unlimited. They're ebook, paperback, hardback, audio. There's audio for 2 books out in the Binding Chronicles right now. And there should be a lot. Well, I don't know. There's more audio in production. I don't know if they're going to be out by the time this comes out in June, but there's audio in production for almost everything in this world. So it's just like, when does it happen? I don't know. But I'm on the Zon and TikTok and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your insight and experience, especially into TikTok. And hopefully, maybe I can dive into that a little bit more in the future and figure out some strategies. So
yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was really nice.
Now, for what's coming up next on the podcast, we have a special treat for you. We were originally going to release this interview on July 1st, but things got a little crazy behind the scenes. So mark your calendars for July 24th to hear from fantasy author Devin Gambrell Clark about setting up an author platform with outside-the-box thinking. Then on August 1st, we'll be diving into the world of business structures with nonfiction and children's book author and YouTuber Emma Rosen. She'll be sharing her insights on LLCs and more. And if you're looking for even more author resources, don't forget you can still catch all the replays from the 2024 AuthorTube Writing Conference, which is free online. After that, we'll be back for another author interview on August 15th.
And that'll do it for us. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much to our incredible listeners and viewers for joining us on our exploration of everything self-publishing. We hope you found our podcast to be a treasure trove of insights and inspiration. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform or thanks on our YouTube episodes. Don't forget, you can catch all of our past episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and other major podcast platforms. Keep writing, keep publishing, and we'll see you next time.